A relationship is like a dance. It takes two to tango. Want to have healthy and successful relationships filled with passion, fun, and harmony? Hi, and welcome to the Two to Tango Show with Linda Sutton, a podcast that explores how we can improve your relationships with God, yourself, your intimate partners, and the community. Tune in and learn actionable insights and tips you can use to improve your relationships. The battle of the sexes ends here. Join Linda Sutton today and take your relationships to a whole new level while having fun every step of the way.
Welcome to the Two to Tango Show, where our role and our goal is to help you with all of your relationships, from your relationship with God and self, intimate partner and family, community, nature, and nations. Hi, I am your host and usually doing the most, Linda Sutton. And today we're going to talk about the embrace in our series on the anatomy of a tango. Subtitle Instant Intimacy. So, we have been doing a serial that has been designed to introduce you to the core elements in the anatomy of a tango. And it is designed to help those who are non dancers to have a fundamental understanding of the structure of what makes up a tango and how that governs the interaction between a man and a woman in dance, and how we can draw parallels from that to relationships off the dance floor. Equally, this serial is designed for those who are dancers to have a new context and a new understanding of the elements that they have been working with and develop strategies and tools from that body of knowledge that they can also use in their interactions with others in the dance of relationship. So we have started out this serial with a understanding that there are six elements that make up the anatomy of a tango, six core elements that make up the anatomy of the tango. And that is leader, follower, the embrace, the principles, which is the rules that govern the roles. My favorite phrase in terms of that is the rules that govern the roles, the environment, the place where the dance occurs, and the music, the rhythm that kind of governs the entire environment, the entire neighborhood, the entire community of dancers, as I like to call them. So, first, we're going to talk about the embrace. So, we talked about in previous episodes and previous podcasts the what it means to be a leader and what it means to be a follower. You definitely want to go back and listen to those so that you have a real clear understanding of the roles and the responsibilities of those two corresponding elements, because the embrace is where those two or elements that are opposite, complementary, interdependent, and equal, the embrace is where they come together. So the embrace actually connects the leader and follower. It is what joins them so that the principles can operate in between them. Now, I've been dancing partner dance, and it was all, for years now, and it's always been an interesting journey to transition from doing dance forms that are solo in nature, where it's just you dancing by yourself or you dancing with a group, but each person is doing their own thing, versus dancing in a partner dance, because a partner dance requires certain things to be agreed upon and adhered to in order for there to be partnership. And then, secondly, for that partnership to operate and function well or gracefully or harmoniously. And so, my first experience with kind of understanding the embrace at a new level occurred when I was in Buenos Aires. So, I'd been dancing a little while, but I'd gone down to Buenos Aires. So it is an international congress that's held, or before COVID was held, once a year. It was sponsored by an organization called Tango, and it was sponsored once a year, every year, in what would be the end of summer there, where dancers from all around the world, the best dancers from all around the world, would all converge for this international dance congress. And so you had this wonderful opportunity, anywhere from 7 to 10 days, where dancers would come together, they would train, they would have master classes with the master instructors in Buenos Aires and globally. And then, of course, have wonderful shows or espectáculos in the evening and milongas that went from the evening all the way until dawn when the train started again, which was usually around dawn. So you can imagine dancing all night long, in part because at that time the milongas would go until the train started. So the train would stop at a certain time and then it would start around sunrise. And so people would dance and hang out and then maybe go to a cafeteria and hang out until the trains began to run again and then go home. So that was kind of the setup. So here we are at Congreso Internacional de Tango Argentina, CITA, and it was just a wonderful, exquisite experience. And so on this particular time, this particular evening, while I was in Buenos Aires, I was at one of the milongas. And so it was just a beautiful setting, kind of an Italian, Mediterranean inspired architecture, just old architecture, an old ballroom. And everyone, of course, was dressed in their tango finery. Um, the dance floor was packed. And so, because it was held at the end of the summer there, which is February, March there, it was a little bit muggier. So the HVAC was just not, because it was older architecture, there wasn't the same level of HVAC. You had fans, but it was a little bit muggy. So you were crowded on the dance floor, was a little bit muggy. So it was a little bit stickier than normal. And definitely you had an awareness that there were a lot of people on the floor, but it was still just an exquisite affair, just a magical. You had DJs, sometimes you had an orchestra. And so this is what was going on. And so we were just having a good time there. Now, normally, the men and women that are not partnered, meaning that you're single, normally you would sit across from each other. So men would be on one side of the room and women would be on the other side of the room. And then there would be an entire section for couples. So that, and then the DJ is sitting across from the couples. And I kind of talked about that context before. But because it was so crowded, you had a lot of people that did not have seats. So you had men and women that were mingling against the walls and hanging out and, kind of inviting each other to dance in an atypical way. Because the dance floor was so crowded, there was a little bit, normally people are very respectful of the rules, but because that the presence was there and there were so many people on the floor, there was some bumping into one another. And of course, that's usually very, very frowned upon. But here we were in this gorgeous venue, hundreds of people on the floor. And so you had a little bit of that going on. And so even though we were enjoying ourselves, it was definitely, you could feel the bodies in the room. As a result of this, during one particular break, I decided to go into the ladies' room in order to cool off. And in this particular environment, because it's an older architecture, the ladies' room is kind of set up differently. Usually there's a parlor or sitting room that is very, very large, almost like a parlor, sitting room, dressing room in the area before you can get into the actual restroom area where the ladies can sit, cool off, take care of themselves, freshen themselves, maybe change clothes, tend to their feet, um, change their shoes, freshen up their makeup, whatever they might want to do. So this is what was going on in the ladies' room. And it just happened to be a little bit cooler there, obviously because there weren't as many people. While I was in there taking a break in the parlor, the parlor, the women's parlor, I heard this little buzz going on, and there was this conversation going on around this gentleman about this gentleman named Dave. And the reason that it got my attention is because you don't usually hear multiple women speaking about a dancer in the parlor. We might refer to a dancer or two, but in this particular circumstance and situation, there were several women who were kind of making mention of Dave and chiming in to the point that it got my attention. I was like, I wonder what's going on. And they were kind of talking about, his dancing and his skill and the experience of dancing with him. And I was like, okay, that got my attention. I was like, this Dave guy, he's all a buzz, creating all this buzz in the ladies' room. And so, I kind of it was enough for me to take track, to keep track of the name. And, I finished and after a while returned back to the floor. I believe it was about an hour later, there was this gentleman that was standing about, I could say two or three, not quite three shoulders width apart from me. And once again, we were all standing up because we didn't have seating. And one of the things that I noticed about him, he was tall. He had the Asian features. He had a long ponytail, but he was a taller gentleman. And the way that his blue jacket was fitting, it was very, very fitted across the shoulders, but much wider in the waist than I expected for his frame. So we just, I just took notice of him because he made eye contact with me and kind of gave me the cabaseo, which is the way that the man invites a woman to dance. And so he gave me the cabaseo, and so I accepted. And he led me out onto the floor and he said, "Hi, my name is Dave. What's your name?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," in my mind, I'm like, this is the Dave that all the women is talking about in the dance room, in the parlor, about his dancing and stuff. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, maybe this is." And so I said, "My name is Linda." And what Dave does is that as the music starts and proceeds, he takes me into the embrace. And as he takes me into the embrace and into his embrace, I felt the world around me dissolve. He took me into the embrace and set up the embrace. And as he began to dance, all of a sudden, it felt like we were the only two people in the room dancing. It was so exquisite and eerie at the same time because the room had been so crowded before. And I remembered the experience of feeling the presence of so many bodies in the room. And all of a sudden, as soon as he closed in the embrace, all of that dissolved away. And all I could feel was his presence. And it literally felt like we were the only two people dancing on the floor. As we proceeded to dance, I actually had this experience of almost emerging with him, where I got to a point where I actually could feel his thoughts. I could hear his thoughts. It was like I was hearing his thoughts and I knew what he was thinking. I knew where he was going to go. And it was like that moment where in Tango, where they say two become one, it was like the distinction between his thoughts and my thoughts ceased to exist. And it was like I knew what he was thinking. I knew what he was going to do. I knew where he was going to go before he even initiated in that direction. Like it was just a knowing. And I had that experience of just kind of like complete oneness. And it was for about a minute. And then after about a minute, it began to fade. And after it began to fade and dissipate, I still felt that connection, but that kind of sense of oneness, that me knowing his thoughts had kind of taken on a new dimension. After we danced our tanda of dances, he led me off the dance floor and we both proceeded with our evening. But I must say that for the rest of my experience there and my time there at Sita, that experience stayed with me. As you can see, all these years later, it's still with me. I tell gentlemen, I say, the fact that we're still talking about Dave all these years later, it tells you a lot about the impact of his embrace on me and should tell you that you really want to have that kind of impact on the ladies that you're dancing with. But that experience lingered with me, and that sense of oneness was a question that kept coming to me. As I thought about that, this question kept coming to my mind, and I said, oh my goodness, this idea that two become one in tango is not just a metaphor. It's not just a cliche. Like this is the experience that people are having when they come to the dance. And so there's more in terms of how that kind of experience and that exploration explored to me and kind of sent me on my way and sent me on my journey of tango. But I really wanted you to kind of hear that Dave's story again is really a part of my origin story in terms of why I started doing this and what drives me and motivates me in the Tutu Tango show. But the thing I want to bring to your attention was his embrace. In this particular story, in this kind of experience, there was something that he did that when he set up the embrace and took me into his arms and closed the embrace and enclosed me into his embrace. And if you're looking at the video, you can see kind of how I'm using my arms to depict how the man kind of closes the embrace. When he closed the embrace and brought me truly into his arms, remember, the experience for me was that everything dissolved around me. And normally, a woman dances, the more skilled that she is, the more she dances with her eyes closed. And I dance with my eyes closed about 95% of the time. So, and that allows me to hear the man carefully, but not only to hear him, but also to hear the environment with my body as opposed to being misled by my eyes. And so, in this situation, the way that he set up his embrace created a completely different environment for me, not only within his arms, but in the room as a whole. And so I wanted to set that kind of so that you have that in your picture in your mind, that kind of sense in your mind and your being about what the embrace is in terms of how it could and should feel. Now, most people think of the dance when they think of tango and they think of the dance, they think that the dance occurs in the movement, in the figures. We call the figures. So the combination of steps that you see that kind of create some sort of dynamic, like boleos and ochos and volcadas. These are the different figures of tango. Most people think of tango in terms of the steps or the movement. But actually, the secret of the synergy of this dance occurs in how you set up the embrace, particularly the man, how the embrace is set up before the dance begins. It is like the 80% of the dance that makes the dance work. So the embrace is the foundational element of the dance partnership. So you have the leader and the follower, and what brings them together and connects them is the embrace. It is a physical mechanism that establishes the connection and the interdependence between the couple. So once they use the embrace, it kind of like attaches them to one another. And therefore, a connection is established, and therefore, the interdependence is established. Also, in setting up the embrace, it also establishes and sets up their roles and positions at this point, and it sets up a sharing of three things. It sets up a sharing of their axis, which means, and we'll talk a lot about that in the future, but in other words, your alignment, where your center of gravity is. It sets up a sharing of energy, meaning the dynamic is no longer you're propelling yourself, she's propelling herself. Like the energy that you all each have is shared now, and it flows between the two of you and within the two of you, within the dynamic of the couple. And then the dynamic is shared. So you share the axis, which is the center of gravity. You share the energy, you share an energy, and then you share the dynamic. And what I mean when I say share the dynamic is you share the energy whether or not you're moving through space. Okay. So even if you stand still and just stand there and breathe and just hold each other in the embrace, you're sharing an energy. Once you take the couple in motion through space, then that becomes a dynamic, that becomes momentum that has to be increased and decreased and managed through space and time. And so you have a shared dynamic, meaning that you can't move any faster than you can move her. She can't move any faster than is within her capacity. So that dynamic is shared. So now, getting into exactly how to set up the embrace, some of the nuances require you being physically present. So some things you would literally have, if you're, especially for my non-dancers, you would have to see physically that in a way that it would make even more sense to you. But I'm going to walk you through kind of the elements and tactics that are the secrets that make the embrace work, that you can still glean an understanding of it, that can of kind of things that can apply off the dance floor. So one of the first secrets of the embrace that creates this connection and this instant intimacy, I like to call it, is for you, especially the gentleman, the leader, to establish your stand, your state, and your stance. Now, To back up a little bit from that, I'm actually going to take a moment to remind the gentleman that you are the one who initiates the dance. Okay. So remember, we talked about how the leader initiates, the follower inspires. So the follower inspires the gentleman to dance. He's like, okay, now I like what I see over there. I see how I like to. I just wanna be close to you. So that's what's going on. The gentleman sees her. He's like, okay, I see that over there. I'd like to be in closer proximity to said young lady over there. So that is the kind of the dynamic that starts out. And this is really important because of her inspiration, then he initiates the dance first and foremost by a technique called the cabaseo. So the cabaseo, and that's a whole conversation by itself. So we're going to talk primarily about the embrace right now. But the cabaseo is the way that the man invites the lady to dance before he approaches her. So there's a lot of unspoken etiquette in the dance of tango, and a man that in tango doesn't just walk up to the woman and ask her if she wants to dance. Because number one, they're usually sitting across the room from each other. What he does is he establishes eye contact with her. And then once she accepts his eye contact, meaning she returns his eye contact, then he uses a sleight of the head. The cabeza is the head. And so he uses the gesture and the sleight of the head to in, signal to the woman the invitation, would you like to dance? She, in kind, uses her own gesture, usually through the head and the hand, to let him know that yes, she accepts. And at that point, the gentleman gets up and then goes over or walks over to the woman to initiate or to start the establishment of the embrace. He'll take her onto the dance floor. And then once he finds the position on the dance floor for the two of them, then he will start to set up the embrace. So there's all this other stuff that's happening prior to the point that he actually gets onto the floor that is important, but we're going to focus on the embrace part of it. And we will talk about the invitation to dance in a subsequent podcast and discussion, because there's a lot of nuances energetically that are important for the gentleman to understand. But here, so one of the first secrets from the embrace, the tactic, is for the gentleman to establish his stand, his state, and his stance. Now, what am I saying when I talk about stand, state, and stance? So, stand has to do with you understanding why you're there. We call it, what do you mean when you take a stand? To take a stand is to be firm in your position. And so, in this dance, the man wants to be very, very clear that when he asks this lady to dance, that he really wants to dance with her. Usually in Buenos Aires is a different dynamic. The men usually ask women to dance that they are very, very interested in dancing with. In the American culture, it's a little bit different because communities are structured in very, very different ways. And so a man might dance with the lady because he wants to give every woman in the room an opportunity to dance. So there might be a more obligatory nature in American dance communities that doesn't exist in Argentine dance communities. The gentlemen there, if they're asking you to dance, they have, as I say, they have peeped you out as a follower, and they are really genuinely interested in dancing with you. So this is important because it expresses in your energy and in your posture and in your body that intention and that desire to dance with that woman. Um, this is important because usually there is, and I always tell ladies, we want to move away from the obligatory nature of dance here in the Americas. And the reason why is because there's nothing worse than dancing as a follower. There's nothing worse than dancing with a man who really didn't want to dance with you, but it's kind of doing it out of obligation because they're trying to make sure that everyone in the social gets an opportunity to dance. That's a very noble effort. But for me, from an energetic standpoint, when a man's desire to dance with that woman is not present, then she feels it and she senses that. And it does not give her a sense of power and empowerment that brings out the best in her in terms of her dance. So she's going to feel a contraction because she can feel his reluctance. He's not fully present. He's not giving all of himself to her in a way that he would if he really, really had a desire to dance with her. So that's really, really important. So the gentleman wants to be clear, where is his stand? How is he mentally? Is he distracted? Is he still not really on the dance floor? He's not really there because something happened at work, something happened in traffic, and he was running late. He didn't get the parking space that he wanted. And so he's kind of frustrated and kind of all over the place. So he's a little tense, or he was running late. And so now he's all sweaty. So it's really, really important that a man is clear about what his state of mind is before he asks the lady to dance, and before, especially before he gets in the embrace, because the gentleman must understand that whatever energy he's holding in his body, he's going to transfer to the woman. So if he's stressed, he's worried, he's frustrated, if he's not confident, if he's unsure of himself and unsure of his step, any of these things, the energies that he's holding in his body, he is going to transfer to her immediately. She's going to feel them and sense them the minute she gets into his arms. So he wants to be aware of that. And then his stance. And I like to say that his stance is his posture. I always say them to the gentleman, what is your stance in the dance? What is your relationship mindset? Because when you are focused versus scattered, then your alignment and posture will be a reflection of that. Said another way, your stance in the dance is not only just your posture, which is your alignment, but it's also what your posture is focused towards. So you usually use your alignment, which is your, kind of your posture through your spine, to bring your sternum and your sternum, which is your breastplate, and your core towards the woman. And that's what you would use to send energy to her and through her to direct her. So you use your sternum and your core, like your belly button and your breastplate, your sternum and your chest and your belly button. You use that energy to send energy to her and through her so that you can direct her. So you're using your body to direct the woman. When you are focused and aligned, then she will receive the fullness of that energy. However, if you're scattered, if you're all over the place, if you're thinking about another woman that you want to dance with, if you're thinking about your boys across the room that you want to impress, then guess what? Your body is going to reflect that because your alignment and posture is going to be directed to wherever your energy and attention goes. So wherever your attention goes, your body will go with it. And so therefore you want to be mindful of that as it relates to what your stance in the dance is. And now, just kind of one more thought in terms of that particular tip and tactic of establishing your state, and stance in the dance is kind of a tip and insight for gentlemen, especially for my gentlemen or for my leaders, is that you want to prepare to embrace her before you invite her into your space or embrace. Always prepare for the woman. Um, and there are several different ways that you can prepare for the woman. You want to prepare for her in terms of getting your mind right. You want to prepare for her in terms of making sure that you're choosing the right song and mood that you want to, in terms of and asking her to dance depending on the nature of the message that you want to communicate with her. So let's say you kind of envision having a very playful interaction with her. You might choose a upbeat milonga or valse to dance with her. If you have a more passionate interest in her, then you may wait until a more traditional tango show plays, or even a nuevo, which is a more modern or urban form of dance that you might choose that selection. And then also you want to prepare for the lady in terms of your hygiene. And I know that's something that's sensitive and maybe challenging to address in the moment, but I'd like to help you address that now, because you really want to be mindful of that in the dance of tango as you choose to invite ladies into your arms and into your space. This is typically more an issue in dances like salsa, where they're a little bit more cardio in nature. There is a more frequent changing of partners. So in dances like salsa, you may change partners after every song. The songs may be a little bit longer, but you change them more frequently. The dance is more dynamic, a little bit faster. And so the gentleman might get warm sooner or quicker, and they may start sweating with greater intensity or frequency or intensity when they're doing that kind of dance. In tango, that's less of an issue. You don't see that as frequent because men tend to in tango be number one, there's more songs that you're dancing with your partner, but also gentlemen tend to be clearer about who they want to dance with. So they may not be going from lady to lady to lady to dance with. But why is this important? Remember, the lady that you're dancing with is usually wearing some sort of big, beautiful gown. It's usually in a delicate fabric. It could be a silk or cashmere or something like that. It's usually it could be a delicate fabric in nature. And it could be very, very form fitting on her body or fluid or what have you. And so you just want the experience to be delightful, to make sure that you taken into account your hygiene before you come into the space, and also as you move from dancer to dancer. That's very, very important. If you found that you've gotten warm in a particular dance, I encourage you and urge you to take time to cool off completely, dry yourself off before you go to the next lady. There's nothing more unappealing to a lady for a gentleman to ask her to dance who is sweating, who's drenched wet with sweat, who's going to get sweat all over her clothes. Even if she's been wanting to dance all night, she's usually not going to want to put her body against a gentleman who just kind of sweated it out with another woman and then bring that to her. So, I know it's very, very delicate, but I'd rather address it right now in a podcast so that you can think about that. And equally, if you think about that off the dance floor, it's the same thing off the dance floor. A lady really wants to feel like she is the one that you are choosing to dance with. And so, even though I know in some social circles, a gentleman just kind of dating multiple women or going from one to woman might be an appealing thing for a lady, especially a lady that you're really, really interested in. That is not at all appealing to her. So that's just something to keep in mind. The next set of tactics in terms of the secrets of the embrace is to establish your posture, your position, and your passion. So, the posture we talked a little bit about in the kind of last bit, but I want to kind of take it a little bit further in terms of what is your posture, meaning what is your position as it relates to her. So, your literal physical posture, your alignment are you standing erect and straight? Are your shoulders back? Is your chest in a way where you're able to provide consistent to support to her with your body? All of these things you want to establish. In terms of your position is a function of inviting the lady to set the distance in the dance. And the lady is the one who establishes the distance in the dance. And when she does, it lets you know what type of embrace you are going to take on. The woman chooses the embrace when she establishes the distance that she is comfortable with in relationship to the man. Now, this is really, really important to pay attention to, my gentlemen, my leaders, my future leaders, my leaders, and my gentlemen. The woman establishes the distance, and when she sets the distance, that establishes the embrace that you will take her into, and therefore the boundaries. So what you are doing is that you're inviting her to decide what is the nature of the boundaries that she has, and then you respect those boundaries. So I usually think of it in terms of inches versus centimeters, and that could help you. So if you were inviting a woman to dance and she stood in front of you anywhere from 8 to 12 inches away from you, then what she is saying is that she is more comfortable with an open embrace. So that's one of the three. That means that you're going to be more open in your embrace. You're both going to be on your own axis or your own balance. You will still share an axis, but you will be more on your own. You'll be able to stand on your own 2 feet a little bit more. And you're going to have distance in between your bodies usually. There's usually going to be distance between your chest and your core, or your torso or your belly button. So there's usually going to be some space there. Or as the my elders say, when used to go dancing back in the day, they say, "Yeah, leave space for Jesus, honey. Leave space for Jesus." Well, that's what we're talking about. So that is called open embrace. If she steps in a little bit closer to you and offers one of her sides, usually she's going to dance, step in, and be a little bit like close, like 6 to 8 inches in front of you. And she offers her side and puts her side along your side. Then what she's saying is she's comfortable with the embrace, the second embrace, which is called salon. And in salon, what you're going to do is a portion of her body is going to be against yours, but a portion of it's not. So you're both going to kind of create a V, if you will, with your bodies. Now, you will still be leading her forward, and you will still be leading in the forward direction. But what happens is that you'll be more looking at each other in the same direction. So you and the lady will usually be looking kind of in the same direction in that embrace. And then the last one is called apilado, which is pecho y pecho, or chest to chest. And that is when the woman steps within the 6 inches in front of you. And what she does is she offers her body to rest against your body. So she usually brings her sternum or breastplate, or bosoms to support on your body, and some of her core, depending on the technique that she's learned. And then she is giving some of her weight over to you. Now, I know some people say that a woman can dance apilado and still be on her own weight and access. Technically, physically, from a physics standpoint, that's impossible. The only way that she can do that is break her alignment. But what she's doing is she's offering her body to you, and she is resting against you and surrendering some of her weight to you in order to be in the embrace. And that's called a lapilado. You'll be facing in one direction, she'll be facing in the other, and that's chest to chest. And there is definitely a shared axis. So you definitely have one axis, and that's running in between the both of you. And she is dependent upon you for support in that embrace. Okay. So once the woman stands in front of you and sets that up, then that is your cue to know how to close out that embrace. So once she establishes the distance, then what the gentleman will do is that he will take her hand and then enclose her into the embrace with his right arm, take her hand with his left arm, and then depending on the distance, that will establish how he completes that embrace. The key is that you want to respect the boundaries that she set. The distance that she sets up is communicating is her communicating to you the amount of trust that she has with you in that moment. So what she's saying is I'm comfortable right now based on what I know about you and my feelings about this kind of interaction, is I'm comfortable with dancing with you in this way for the time being. So, for example, she might not be sure, she hasn't seen you dance enough, or she's not certain, confident yet in your skill level. So, she may come to you with a more open embrace because right now that's what she's comfortable with. It is up to you to respect that, because if you disrespect that and try to pull her in closer to you, what you're going to do is you're going to feel her body tense up and resist or try to pull away. And you don't want that, because what she's letting you know is what she's comfortable with. So it's your role as a leader to respect her boundaries and allow her to become more and more comfortable with you. And as she becomes more and more comfortable with you and her own skill level in that interaction, is likely that she will get closer and closer to you. So it's an unfoldment. It is a conversation. You don't usually tell everybody all your intimate secrets right out of the gate. So it shouldn't be surprising with you that with some ladies, it may take a little bit longer for them to feel comfortable dancing with that close to you. For some ladies, they may never feel dancing that close with you ever. Their there's only certain people that they feel that comfortable being that close and intimate with, and it is intimate. So I know, we talk about this tango as a social dance, but it wasn't born out of just an idea of being social. It really was about courtship and a desire to be close to a lady that the gentleman was interested in. And so it wasn't just about dancing socially. There is an intimacy to it that some people only want to reserve with one person or certain people that they've built that trust with. The last thing is that um, you want to be comfortable in your passion. Once again, your desire. Remember, the lady is feeling everything in your arms. And so if there's a reluctance that you have to dancing with her, she's going to feel that. And so, I don't mean passion as in terms of your sexual desire, but passion meaning that you have a desire to dance with her. It's like, I really want to be with her. It's like inviting someone on a date and you let them know that you are excited to be there with them. You know that you're pleased with their presence. You're glad that they accepted your date invitation. So you let them know up front that you appreciate the fact that they've accepted your invitation, that you're excited and you're looking forward to the date ahead. The same thing with the dance. You want to acknowledge and acknowledge that the woman has accepted your dance and that you appreciate that she's accepted her dance because she's taking on a role. She's taking herself out of a position of independence in that moment and has chosen to be interdependent with you, to trust your lead, and to entrust you with her safety and well-being for that 9 to 12 minutes. So you want to demonstrate and express an appreciation and a gratitude. And you can either do that verbally, but you can also do that with your body. You can do that with your body that expresses an appreciation that you want to be there with her and that you appreciate her rather than a reluctance. An important thing is that once you set up the embrace, what you are doing is that you are establishing to her a baseline that she is going to be relying upon and looking towards throughout the dance. Okay. So this is where a man's consistency comes into play in the embrace. And this is a real talk, real talk, real talk, real talk. Okay, so once the gentleman comes in, what makes her trust you is what you present to her in the beginning. So whatever strength and power and posture that and whatever body you offer to her at the beginning, and she is using that as her baseline to say, okay, this is the amount of support that he's providing me and this is what I'm going to be relying upon because I'm giving over to him my weight. I'm trusting him and I'm entrusting him with me. I'm entrusting him with my well-being and my safety, and I'm trusting that he can support my weight. So especially in apilado, I'm trusting that he can support what he's asked for. You as a gentleman have asked her to come into your space and trust you. And so what she's going to look for is, okay, he's asked me to surrender my weight to him, to trust him and entrust him with myself. And so I'm going to be looking to see that he can handle that. And the way that he does that is by providing support. Now, hear me when I tell you that this is the ultimate metaphor for on and off the dance floor in terms of support. So, gentlemen, whatever support you provide in the beginning needs to be consistent throughout the entire dance in order for you to maintain her trust and her confidence in you. If your support of her while you're dancing starts to wax and wane, then she doesn't know what to expect. And she doesn't know if at any point in time your full support of her will be there. And so, therefore, especially if she's chosen to share an access with you, what she's going to start to do is start to pull and withdraw to be on her own access so that she doesn't have to rely on you for support. Super, super significant because if you want to establish intimacy in the embrace with her and inspire deeper and deeper levels of trust from her, You have to be consistent. Your lead has to be consistent. Your support has to be consistent. If you are inconsistent as a leader, she is not going to want to be a consistent follower. If your support is not consistent, then she will not trust you and entrust you. Her confidence will not be there. And so she will be looking to support herself rather than look to you for support. And if you want to be in a kind of extended, sustained relationship where you want her to look to you for support, then you have to understand that energetic dynamic that occurs not only on the dance floor, but off the dance floor. So the more consistent you are, the more consistent your support and your stability is, the more that she will increase in trust and increase in her confidence in entrusting more of her to you. So that usually will come in the form of her willingness either to get closer to you into a closer, more intimate embrace, or even if she's an intimate embrace, her willingness to give more of her weight to you, which actually frees her legs up physically to do more things. But once again, she has to be sure that you have her. And when she's sure that you have her, then she will, like I said, surrender more and more and in deeper and deeper ways. So this is really significant, not only on the dance floor, but I'm sure you can hear some clear parallels for off the dance floor. Now, the third major tactic and secret that you want to use is what I call breathe her in and take her breath away. And so I don't want to get into the details of all the secrets. Y'all gonna have to come see me for some of them secrets. But I will say this is that you want to start listening to a woman's nonverbal communication. You want to start listening to her in a different sort of way. So the goal in the dance, especially as you're setting up the embrace, is not about okay thinking about what you want to execute or lead as a gentleman. What you really want to be doing is that you want to be thinking of how is she feeling in my arms, and is do I sense that she is comfortable and ready for my lead. And there are a few ways that you can listen to hear if she is ready to receive your lead. This sounds like something else, don't it? No, I'm not gonna point out the obvious, but I'm sure y'all can hear what I'm saying and read between the lines of what I'm saying here. But we're talking about on the dance floor right now. And so you want to be listening to her body to hear whether or not she's ready to receive your lead. And the two places that you want to be listening for is the level of tension in her body or the level of ease in her body and her breathing. Her breathing and the level of tension or ease in her body will give you an insight into her level of receptivity. So the thing that you want to do is that you want, if you want to be a great leader in your establishment of the embrace, you really want to take the time to listen to her level of readiness before you initiate momentum, because there's a sweet spot that you want to listen to where she is the most receptive and open to your lead. That usually takes a few moments for her to arrive at after she's gotten into your embrace and you've established it. So she's gotten into your embrace, you've established it, and now literally her body and her being is trying to feel you out. And as her body gets more and more familiar and more comfortable with what she senses is going on in the embrace, the more and more relaxed she gets or tense, and the more and more relaxed more and more relaxed she gets, and therefore the more and more receptive she is to your lead. And so that's what you want to be listening to. So that's why I say breathe her in and take her breath away, because there is a way that you can listen to her breathing. There's some techniques that you can use as it relates to her breathing, so that you can just kind of take in the way that she's breathing, um, read how she's breathing and what that means. And then once you are clear about what you're reading from her breathing and her body and her level of ease and tension, once you arrive at that sweet spot, then you can proceed to take her breath away by starting the momentum and starting to what I would say is the next tactic, which is sweep her off her feet. So now that you've had a chance to breathe her in and take her breath away, so after you've had the chance to kind of breathe her in and take her breath away, then the next thing you want to do is that you want to make her melt in your arms. So once again, once you have seen and done the exercises in terms of being aware of her breathing and what it's communicating to you, whether you had the chance to really listening to the level of ease and tension in her body, then that information you will use to make adjustments that will invite her to release more and more tension. So if she comes to you tense, or you see that her breathing is erratic, or there's some tension or concern or uncertainty, then what you want to do is make adjustments within your body that reassure her that everything is okay or safe. Several of the ways that you can do that is literally by providing more support. Sometimes it's just being still and waiting and allowing her to unfold in your arms. So sometimes with gentlemen, when they are eager to dance with a lady, they will, get her in and they just grab her and then pull her in, and then they're ready to be off to the races without really listening to see if she's ready, if she's established, if she's ready to go. And you usually will hear that through her body. You don't usually get a chance to talk that through in a social setting. You will feel that through her body. And sometimes the process of waiting and kind of listening to her not only will let you know, but also will send a signal to her that you are paying attention to her, that you are listening, that you are listening to the nuances of her and using that information in order to make adjustments before you even begin. And this is important, because remember, that is one of the key roles and responsibilities of the leader, is to listen to his follower and then make any adjustments that he needs in order to bring her into alignment with him before he proceeds to the next step. Once you've had a chance to kind of make her melt in your arms, and then you establish the rest of the embrace, which is to provide support, spacious boundaries, and safety for with her, then it's an opportunity to sweep her off her feet. And what that literally is that you begin to manipulate her weight. You shift, what I call shift her weight. And because at this point you are now leading her steps, you are literally leading the way that she moves through space and time. And so this is important because you will use the shifting and changing of her weight, which is its own discussion, but it's the way that you change her weight from one foot to the other, which makes one foot free and one foot planted, and allows you to be able to move that foot from one space. And you can listen to how responsive she is to your lead. And then from there, you are able to start the dance and move. You're able to engage your propulsion and start to propel the two of you forward into space and time and pleasure. Hmm. Awesome. So I know that was a lot of involvement, a lot of tips. Once again, 80% of the dance happens in that setup. The way that you set up the embrace determines the success of the entire dance. If you don't take the time to set that up, you will be stumbling and stepping all over each other within 5 to 7 steps. Within the first 30 seconds max, it will all fall apart. So it's either going to all start to work, or it's all going to all start to fall apart within that if you do or don't set that up correctly. Now, my final words on this that I would like you to walk away with is that you want to set up your embrace every single time. Even if you are dancing with the same partner over and over again, you want to take the time to establish the connection and establish the interdependence and establish the ease before you begin to dance each and every time. Now, I know that I say this whenever I'm coaching gentlemen and ladies, I give them this tip, and I was like, the key to your success, one of the keys is to set up your embrace. Take the time every single dance to do that. It does not matter if you've been dancing with this dancer for 10 or 15 years. You want to take the time to go through this process, to establish the connection, to allow them to establish the boundaries, to listen to where they are, to hear how receptive they are to your lead, or your advances. You really want to be in a state of doing that every single time. There is one particular person that I was teaching, and I have permission to his name. His name is Paul, and he was a brand new dancer to the scene, and he came to several of my boot camps, and he was a gentleman that was very receptive to coaching. And so I was sharing with the gentleman that one of the keys to success, if you really want to be successful in this dance quickly, is to take the time, take that 80% and set up your dance every single time, every single woman, every single dance. Even if you're dancing with one woman 3 or 4 times, take the time and go through this process every single time. My more mature and advanced dancers, they believed it, but they didn't take the time. Sometimes they would do it. They were inconsistent with their setup of the dance. They were inconsistent with their setup of the embrace. They were felt because they had more experience as a dancer that that wasn't necessary. Like the ladies that they had been dancing with, they knew them. So of course they could establish the embrace quicker. But with Paul actually really took that advice to heart, and he took the time to do it every single time. He actually took that advice to heart and began to do it every single time. Within a matter of weeks, he had accelerated his dance immensely. Had very quickly became a proficient dancer because he was taking the time to and set up and establish his framework, his connection with every lady every single time before he began. And so as a result, not only was he very, very consistent in his lead and in his technique, he was very meticulous with it because he was taking the time to set it up. But as a result, he was able to gain the trust of women quicker because he did not skip over the steps. He did not make any assumptions that just because the last dance she was okay and at ease and relaxed, that she was still that way, that maybe she had gotten more fatigue, or maybe she had, become even more relaxed. He took the time, and the ladies that he was dancing with took note of it, and they became more at ease with him quicker, which also allowed him to be able to do more with the ladies that he was working with, because he had taken the time to build up that intimacy, that connection, that trust, that confidence, that consistency and stability that made the ladies more and more available and more responsive to his lead. And in fact, so much so that it got the attention of a lot of the advanced dancers. And they were like, where Paul came out of left field, like, how in 6 weeks is he one of the top dancers now in the community? And it was really that quickly. And you don't normally see that kind of level of advancement in such a short period of time. So I want you to take those little tips and just kind of go through them and think about how you might apply some of those ideas, gentlemen, off the dance floor in terms of setting up the embrace and establishing a sense of instant intimacy. I will circle back around and give the ladies some tips of their own, but the responsibility for setting up the embrace is the gentleman's. And so he sets the stage. He, as they say, creates the frame for the picture that is the lady to set in. So I wanted to spend the majority of the time talking to you all, gentlemen. Ladies, hopefully you were listening so that you can have some understanding of what to expect and how you should respond in kind as we establish the embrace, the seat of connection in the anatomy of the tango. I I am Linda Sutton, and as you can see, if you want additional resources or you want to see more details about this particular podcast, you can go check out the blog post for this podcast on the website at www.the number two, tangoshow.com. And as we say on the Two to Tango show, it not only takes two to tango, but absolutely it takes you to tango. Ciao.
We have just concluded another moving episode of the Two to Tango show with Linda Sutton. Did you enjoy the show? If so, head over to the2totangoshow.com and discover a whole array of resources to help you spice up your relationship in every way. That's tangoshow.com. We would also like to hear from you, so don't forget to leave a review or feedback. Join us again next week for another entertaining and fun episode. Until then,